Omagyanatimundaśya Chinanjala Saksaran Militam Yena Tasmai Sigove Namah Chitchaitanyamanopistam Staptam Yena Bhutale Svamrupkadamyam Dadati Sva Pranantikam Vandeham Shiro Sheyuda Padakamlam Shigung Vaishnavam Sha Shirupam Jagajatam Saganaranatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Saudutam Parjana Saitam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Saganalita Shivshakam Vitam Sha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Chatpate Gopesha Gopakanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavanashve Vishabhana Sutta Devi Pranamama Haripriye Vancha Kalptarvisha Kripasan Mevisha Patnam Pavanabhyo Vaishnabhyo Namo Nama Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Vistaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswata Devi Gauravani Pacharani Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paskachai Desatarani Srila Prabhupada Ki. So, we will be discussing the last 6 chapters of the Bhagavad-gita. The first 6 chapters, they were mainly, not only, but mainly about Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga leading to knowledge, and now that knowledge leads to Bhakti. That first coming to the platform of knowledge. And then the 6 middle chapters were on devotional service, the most confidential part. But now the 6 last chapters, that of course chapter 18 is a summary, but the other chapters are all about Jnana and how Jnana leads to Bhakti. So in this chapter we will hear the 6 subject matters that this 13th chapter is one of the chapters who is difficult to understand in comparison with other chapters. That and it's about 6 subject matters. So that's something you need to remember as a Bhakti Shastra student. 13th chapter has 6 subject matters. And the fourth first of them. There is some disturbance. Okay. Everyone can mute. So there are 6 subject matters in this chapter. Kshetra, the field of activities, which is the body. Kshetrajna, the knower of the field. We will get to understand that there are 2 knowers of the field. The spirit soul and the super soul. And then there is Jnanam, knowledge. Jnayam. Jnayam is the object of knowledge. What's the object of knowledge is the super soul. 10-12 verses, Krishna will speak about the super soul. And then there is Prakriti and Purush, material nature and the enjoyer. And that gives the title to this chapter, Nature and the Enjoyer and Consciousness. So Arjuna will start with questions, and he will ask questions on these four terms: Kshetra, Kshetrajya, Jnanam, Jneyam. Text 1 and 2, because Lord Krishna will immediately start replying to the questions of Arjuna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Arjuna Vacha Prakatim Purusham Sheva Kshetram Kshetrajnane Vasha Eta Veditum Ichami Jnanam Jnenam Sakeshava. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Idam Sariram Kaunteya Kshetram It Abhidiyate Teyo Veti Tam Prahu Kshetrajya Iti Tatvida. Arjuna said, "Oh my dear Krishna, I wish to know about Prakriti, nature, Purush, the enjoyer, and the field and the knower of the field, and of knowledge and the object of knowledge." So the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, this body, O son of Kunti, is called the field. And one who knows the body is called the knower of this field. So the body is the field of activity of the conditioned soul. And Srila Prabhupada makes an interesting statement in this purport. He says, so according to his capacity to dominate material nature, he gets a field of activities. That capacity he gets according to his previous activities. And now, the person who should not identify himself with the body is called Kshetra, the knower of the body. Of course, we know most men in this world, they are identifying with the body very strongly, but they are not in knowledge. One is Kshetrajya when one knows I'm different from the body, and I'm the knower of the body. The same with the mind. That some philosophers say, I'm thinking, feeling, willing, I am. But we are not this thinking, feeling, and willing done by the mind, because we are not the mind. That one who knows this observes the mind, but that needs spiritual power, spiritual realization. Any person can consider that from childhood to old age he undergoes so many changes of the body, yet he is still one person remaining. So that's interesting. That because we know somewhere that we are not the body, but this awareness is overcovered by the illusion to enjoy this body. That, it's like someone gets a loan from the bank, and we know the body changes every moment so many cells are changing, that every day we change. It's practically imperceptible, small change, but every day some change is there. But if you have a contract for a loan of the bank, and we know that the body changes, every 6 years all the cells are practically replaced. Every 6 years a new body. After 6 years you don't go to the bank and say, oh, I don't have to pay this loan anymore. I have a different body. I'm not the one who signed the contract. No, we know that we are different from the body, some way or another, but it's not going deeper. that but that deeper thought is there. So that Srila Prabhupada explains, we know that we are different from the things used. So we say my mind, my intelligence. These are instruments that we are using. But that's maybe quite deep knowledge. But if you study the Bhagavatam, there you have in the first canto, 7th chapter, text 5. These are the realizations of Srila Vyasadeva, who is meditating on the Absolute Truth. And he shares his realizations. In the purpose, Srila Prabhupada writes, the spirit soul has its own thinking, feeling and willing in the unconditional state also. So we have a spiritual body and our own thinking, feeling and willing. But that thinking, feeling and willing is part of our spiritual nature. That's not different. There's no different mind. That's really us. But this thinking, feeling and willing of the spiritual body, which is now covered by a subtle and a gross body, cannot be used for selfish purposes. So that means Krishna gives us a material mind and a material intelligence which is different from our spiritual body. And we use this material intelligence and material mind in our endeavor to exploit this world. Amayapam Shashivilga Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. And then is said in the next line that those who are the spirit souls are my part and parcels, and they try to exploit this material world. And that's our position. Therefore we have these instruments, mind and intelligence, the subtle body, and we identify with it. And that's the big problem. These are instruments to be used, Srila Prabhupada said. We know that we are different from the things we used. So Srila Prabhupada concludes in the purport, 13th chapter. Now we are starting with the 13th chapter, how the living entity comes in contact with material nature and how he is delivered by the Supreme Lord to different methods of fruitive activities, cultivation of knowledge, and that its discharge of devotional service is explained. So we will go first, I will go to the first 7 verses, and then we have some questions and some discussion. I will ask a question to initiate a discussion, and then we have a pause of 10 minutes. Then after that we will have the next part of the 13th chapter. So Krishna, in summary, because Arjuna is asking these questions, and Krishna explains that the body made of senses is the field of activities of the conditioned souls. Yes, and we receive a certain type of body according to its capacity to dominate material nature. So every type of body gives a different capacity. That if you have the body of a dog, you have to bark. That's your capacity. But in human form of life, we have intelligence. We can plan things. It's different. Different level of capacity to dominate material nature. So one who identifies himself with the body is kshatriya, but we should not identify with the body. We are the knower of the body. So the knower is different from the body. Like if you possess something, it's different from that which he possesses. Yeah, anyway, that's text 3. Kshatrayam sapi mam vidi sarvakshetre subharatam. Kshatranagmukyanam yattatsyanam matam mama. O sign of Bharat, you should understand that I am also the knower in all bodies, and to understand this body and its knower is called knowledge. So Krishna explains what Jnana is. Jnana begins with understanding that the knower of the body and the body are different. So we have here 3 different topics of study. That you have the Lord, the living entity, and you have matter. So in every field of activities, in every body, there are 2 souls. The individual soul and the super soul, Atma and Paramatma. Krishna says that I am also the knower, but I am not the individual knower of the body. He is a super knower. I am present in everyone's body as Paramatma and the super soul. That means we are in this body, the spirit soul is in the heart, 1/10,000th of a point of a hair, and it's a source of consciousness. And this consciousness is spread to the entire body, to the bloodstream. So everywhere you have blood in your body, you have feeling that because there is consciousness transported from the heart. So we know what's going on in our body to a certain extent. Well, we have some awareness, but not much, because are we aware that our heart is beating? We miss one beat and it's finished. That's the super knower, Krishna, is arranging as Paramatma the beating of our heart. He's arranging our digestion, but he's a super knower. We even don't know how this digestion goes. No, but he knows in detail. Krishna is in every cell, between every cell, between every atom, in every atom. He does everything. So he's the super knower. He is present in every body as Paramatma, as the super soul. So there is one super soul in our heart, which is accompanying the soul. But there are also super souls in every cell. That's interesting. So Krishna says, I am the knower of the field of activities in every individual body. The individual body, the individual may be the knower of his own body, but he is not in knowledge of other bodies. So we know what we are thinking, feeling, but we cannot know what others thinking are feeling. And Krishna knows everything of every individual, what they are thinking, feeling, and willing. So he's the super knower. So Srila Prabhupada gives the analogy of the king is the original proprietor of the kingdom, and the citizen is the secondary proprietor. So the real proprietor of the body is Krishna, and we are the secondary proprietor. So So the Supreme Lord is the proprietor, controller, and knower of all bodies, and the Jiva is the proprietor, controller, and knower only of his body. That knowledge means to understand the position of Prakriti, nature, Purus, the enjoyer, and Ishvara, the knower who controls both nature and the individual soul. So that shows the constitutional position of the soul and the constitution of the supersoul. And knowing that difference and their capacities, that's called knowledge, Srila Prabhupada. That this is, Srila Prabhupada said, this is what the Vedic literature describes as knowledge. And then Srila Prabhupada in the purport, he gives an analogy. Traditionally, that's a question at the exam of the Bhakti Sastri. So it's about, it's about the painter, the painting, and the easel. So explain the analogy of the painter, the painting, and the easel. So Prakriti, Purus, and Ishvara. So Prakriti means material nature. The body is material nature. Then you have the Purus. Living entity is the Purus, trying to enjoy material nature. But he can only enjoy if Ishvara, the big controller, will dominate material nature, and the individual soul agrees. So who is the painter? The painter is Ishvara, the Supreme Lord, who, as the Supersoul, dominates and controls material nature. So, what is the easel of the painter? It's Prakriti, material nature. And then, what is the painting? The painting is the Purus that Krishna gives us through material nature, this body. This, the body by which we can enjoy the Purus. So that's this analogy. So further in this chapter, we will hear about these two knowers, two kshatriyas, the individual soul and the super soul. And one is fallible, the other is infallible. One is superior, the other is subordinate. So Krishna says, I am also the knower of the field of activity. One who understands a rope to be a serpent is not in knowledge. Srila Prabhupada writes. There are different kinds of bodies and there are owners of bodies. And bodies and owners of bodies. We are the owner of the body. Super soul is also the owner of the body. That, yes. So Krishna says that real knowledge is to know the super soul is a controller of the field of activities and a finite enjoyer. That's, if one thinks oneself to be the body and not the knower of the body, one misunderstands a rope to be a serpent. That good. Then text 4. Kshat Kshetram Yat Shayat Viksha Yat Vikari Yatasayat Sasayo Yat Prabhavascha Tat Samasenameshvinu. Now please hear my description of this field of activity and how it is constituted, what its changes are, whence it is produced, and who that knower of the field of activities is, and what its influences are. So one must, Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, one must know the body and from which materials it is made, that and who controls the working of this body will be further explained in chapter 15. Krishna says, Sarvasam Redishana Vistamata Shmitkanama Pamsa. For me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Whatever we know, whatever we forget, whatever we remember, done by Krishna. Krishna gives us that thus knowledge. 1861 Ishvara Sarvabhutnam Richi Sarunatistati Brahmyam Samabhutanam Yantarutai Maya. I'm seated in everyone's heart, and I control the wanderings of all living entities who are seated in a yantra, a machine made of material energy. And Krishna controls the super soul as one of the knowers, the kshatriya, that one should know how the changes are taking place, where from the changes are coming, what the causes are, what the reasons are, and what the ultimate goal of the individual soul is, and what the actual form of the individual soul is. There's a lot of knowledge. This will be further explored in the Bhagavatam. So many ways. And this helps us to realize that but one should be careful not to consider the Supreme Personality of Godhead in every body to be one with the individual, the Jiva. This is some like equating the potent and the impotent. So Krishna, in this verse 4, raises 5 points on which he will elaborate further in this chapter. First, how the body is constituted, verse 6 and 7. What changes the bodies undergo, verse 7 to 20. How, when, and where the body is produced is explained in verse 6, 21, 22, 30. And the identity of the knower of the field of activities. That's explained, all this knowledge of the super soul from verses 14 to 18 and 23. And then the influence of the knower, that's explained in verses 14, 18. So he gives here these points and now he's going to explain them. Text 5. and that's also interesting. Rishibir Baudagi Tam Chandobir Vidadai Pritak Brahma Sutra Padashaiva Hetumadbir Finishitai. That knowledge of the field of activities and the knower of activities is described by various sages in Vedic writings. It is especially presented in the Vedanta Sutra with all reasoning as to cause and effect. So, learned scholars, standard authorities always give evidence from previous authorities. So, although Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he's the Supreme Authority, but he's referring here to sages, to the Vedanta Sutra, to support his statements. Thus, as Arjuna's guru, he refers to Sadhu and Shastra to confirm. It's very important. We will discuss that further a little later. Sadhu and Shastra. Thus, as Arjuna's guru, he refers to Radha, Sadhu and Shastra to confirm his statements, showing how Guru, Sadhu and Shastra are all required, all three, to establish the truth. That a few points of the purport. The higher and lower natures exist due to ignorance and are being manifested in an infinite number of living entities. But the supersoul, which is infallible, is uncontaminated by the three modes, the three qualities of material nature. And then Srila Prabhupada speaks about the Brahma Pucham. The Brahma Puchams are 5 realizations of the Absolute Truth. And that is stated in Taittiriya Upanishad 2.5. So that could also be a question of your exam. Explain the Brahma Pucham, these 5 realizations of the Absolute Truth. So first is explained Annamaya, depending on food existence. Like the fish, the animals, what are they doing? What's their consciousness? Their consciousness is Annamaya. They are always searching, where is food, where is food, where is food, trying to get food. So that's Annamaya. A little higher consciousness is Pranamaya, realizing the absolute truth in the living symptoms of life form. One realizes, yes, mostly on the animal level, I'm not alone. I'm not alone who is searching for food. There are some competitors. And sometimes I have to defend myself. So that is Pranamaya. And then one comes to Jnanamoya. One thinks, oh, I'm thinking, feeling, willing. That this realization to thinking, feeling and willing. One becomes interested in arts, in development of knowledge, that emotions, that so many desires that go with that. And then a little higher, well, Jnanamoya is also called sometimes Manamoya, the same. Yes, thinking, feeling, willing. That. But then when one comes to higher consciousness, one starts to understand, I'm not a body. Vijnanamoya. I'm not a body. What's the goal of life? that that is, yeah, one gets young, one realizes I'm not a body, but one has not yet realization. So these four first stages are on the material platform. But then the next stage is the transcendental stage, Ananda Moya, when one realizes that one is a liberated soul, one becomes liberated. That's Ananda Moya. So these are 5 stages of Brahman realization called Brahma Puja. Brahma Puja, yeah. So out of these, the first 3, Anamoya, Pranamoya, and Jnanamoya, involve the field of activities of the living entity. Transcendental to all these activities of the Supreme Lord is Anandamoya. So Anandamoya is transcendental. That, but the living entity decides himself to dovetail him with, when he decides to dovetail himself, Srila Prabhupada tries with Anandamoya, with the bliss attained through devotional service, he becomes perfect. So one has to search for this truth, Srila Prabhupada writes in the Vedanta Sutra, of the Brahma Sutra, how to come to this Anandamoya, the natural state of the spirit soul. Because the Lord expands himself to enjoy transcendental bliss. In the activities of the living entity, in the field of activities, the living entity is considered to be the enjoyer, and it's different from this Anandamaya. It's in the material field. So the living entity, if he dovetails himself, connects himself with the spiritual energy, with Anandamoya, then he becomes perfect. So that connection is yoga, and that yoga connection is made by devotional service. Signs of Krishna consciousness. Now, that is text 6-7 now. Man bhutan ahankaro buddha vyaktameva sha indriyana dasaikam sha pansha sandriya gochara itvat vesukam dukam sangata sitanastiti itachetam samasena savikaram udaritam. The 5 great elements, false ego intelligence, the unmanifested, the senses, and the mind, the 5 sense objects, desire, hatred, happiness, distress, the aggregate, and the life symptoms and convictions, all these are considered in summary to be the field of activities and its interactions. So the field of activities is a temporary manifestation. This body is temporary. It's composed of 24 elements. Srila Prabhupada describes these elements in the purport. That, First he says there are the 5 great elements, the Mahabhutas. Bhumi, Rab, Analor, Kam. So these are, earth, air, ether, fire, water. This is the Mahabhuta, the 5 elements. And then there are 3 other elements: false ego, intelligence, and the unmanifested stage of the 3 modes of nature. That's interesting. That maybe, because what I will do is I will share with you on the screen a document. I'm back to share screen. So first we have the 5 great elements called in Sanskrit Maha Bhuta, and that is earth, water, fire, ether, and air. So these are 5 elements, and then Srila Prabhupada writes, there are 3 more elements, and they are false ego, intelligence, and the unmanifested state of material nature. So we have already 8 elements, and then above the senses there is the mind. No, there are 5 senses of acquiring knowledge. So these are, here we have 5. Here we have 3. And then we have 5 working senses. Oh, 5. 5 working senses. What are these 5? Srila Prabhupada writes, these 5 working senses, eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. Then above the senses there is the mind. The mind, which can be called, Srila Prabhupada said, the mind is a sense within. So we have now 5, 3, 5 is the, then you have the 5, the working senses. Now these are the, sorry, I made an error here. 5 acquiring knowledge. Acquiring knowledge senses. And then you have again 5 working senses. 5 working senses: voice, legs. I'm writing it down because I presented many times the Bhakti Sastri, and the votes are sometimes confused about this point, about this 24, that so voice, legs, hands, anus, genitals. And then you have the mind. It's called the sense within, right? So that's also one. And then Srila Prabhupada writes, so we have 11 senses together, 5 acquiring knowledge and senses, 5 working senses. And the mind, that's 11 senses. And we had before 8 elements. So we are at 19, but then you have 5 objects of the senses, and that will bring us to 24. 5 objects. Objects of the senses. And what are these objects? Srila Prabhupada says, smell, taste, form, touch and sound. So the aggregate of these 24 elements is the field of activities. Aggregate of these 24 elements is the field of activities. Okay. So that is a field of activities. And then there are desire, hatred, happiness and distress. So attachment, aversion, happiness and distress. That's going together with the body. And it's an experience of the body. It's attachment, aversion, happiness and distress. It's not an experience of the soul. It's an experience that comes into our mind. That it's an experience that comes into our mind. This happiness and distress. And this attachment and aversion. That so this attachment and aversion we create because we are identifying with the body. We think, and that's explained before in Bhagavad-gita, because through 334, Krishna said there are 2 obstacles of the path of spiritual realization, attachment and aversion. There's attachment and aversion, and the happiness and distress. And we have to tolerate this happiness and distress, Krishna says. And this attachment and aversion we have to get out. Because we are attached to what gives pleasure to the body. And we are averse to what gives pain. No, I don't want that. Attachment and aversion. So we don't want that. And yeah, that goes by lust. Lust makes us identify with the body. So the living symptoms represented by consciousness and convictions are the manifestations of the subtle body, mind, and intelligence. The 5 great elements are a gross representation of the false ego. That's all explained also in the creation, in the Bhagavatam, in the 2nd canto, in the 3rd canto. How all these gross elements are created by the false ego. False ego is the consciousness that I'm this body and I want to enjoy through this body. And that consciousness makes us take birth again and again and again, because that makes these 5 elements appear and form a body, because of our material desires. So that comes from that false ego. So what is this unmanifested modes of material nature? So Prabhupada explains here in the purport. It's called pradhan. Pradhan. That is the unmanifested stage of the 3 modes of nature. But that pradhan develops because of the desires of the conditioned souls to enjoy. But in the beginning it's unmanifested, but it becomes unmanifested in the subtle elements, later in the gross elements. That's the process of the creation of the universe, but also the process of the creation of our own body. And that's the cause. But if you don't understand that, well, in the study of the Bhagavatam, that comes again. That will certainly become clear there. So the body is a representation of all these factors, and there are changes of the body, which are 6 in number. That the body is born, it grows, it stays for some time. You have byproducts, children. It starts to decay, and it vanishes. So these are things you have to remember for your study. 24 elements. What are these? I brought them on the screen. And these 6 changes that the body goes through. Good. That was quite a lot of yarn. That I hope you are not too bewildered by it. But now I want to ask you a question. So Lord Krishna refers to Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So we need all 3. So what will happen if you have only the Guru and you have no Sadhu and Shastra? What will go wrong? Can someone tell me?
Maharaj, there are so much bogus gurus. So, I mean, how do we know that the guru is bona fide or not? And what's the authenticity of what he's speaking? How do we verify that whether he's speaking is the truth or not, or it's just a mental speculation?
Yes, sure. That's a very good reason. Thank you, Kadala. Does someone else want to contribute? Let me ask another question. What if we have only sadhu? What will happen? Someone else, when we have only sadhu, and we don't have guru or shastra?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, all of three are very important. Without Shastra, generally, basically, and what Guru says, what is in the Shastras, and what Sadhu teaches, what is in the Shastras, is that. And if there is no Guru, then just as we hear that Brahman Gumite Kono Bhagyavan Jeev Guru Krishna Kripa Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. If there is no Guru, then whatever we are doing, even we are chanting the mantra, and there is more verse. I'm remembering that mantra say Nishphala Mata. Till the time we don't take initiation, whatever we chant, that is yes fruitful up to some extent, but actually the fruit it is fructify. We get to attach to the parampara and our then only we can go back home, back to the Godhead, and we can attain the goal of life, that Krishna Prem, if there is Guru. And without Guru, there is not possible to attain the this. And Shastra is what is about the teachings of Krishna. So it is very important to have a Guru. If Guru is not there, it's not possible to. All three are very important, and this Sadhu is not there. Sadhu is one that who teaches us. Actually, the main role who plays is the Sadhu. That as we see in the temple, we take initiation in later years. But who puts his sweats and blood on us? That is Sadhu. So this is could I say, Maharaj? Thank you.
But that's very good. Thank you, Mother Rukmini. I was thinking. So the point is, if you suppose you have only Guru and Shastra and not Sadhu, what misconceptions or wrong practice could arise from that?
Or else there won't be any concept of serving the Vaishnavas, the devotee association. And one would say that there is me, there is my guru. I don't bother about anyone else. Whilst I heard in a lecture that if we serve only Shiksha Guru, then neither Shiksha Guru, Diksha Guru or Krishna is satisfied. If we serve only Diksha Guru, then neither Diksha Guru nor Krishna is satisfied. And if we serve only Krishna, then Krishna is not satisfied. But if we serve Vaishnavas, then all three, Shiksha Guru, Diksha Guru and Krishna, all three are satisfied. So in that sense, serving the devotees, there won't be any such thing existing.
Very good. Thank you. So let's now have a pause. It's in Delhi now 8 o'clock. Let's convene again at 10 past 8 and for the second part, that verses 8 to 19. Thank you. Hare Krishna. See you in a few minutes. Hare Krishna. So we can continue with the next section of chapter 13, verses 8 till 19. In verses 8 to 12, the process of knowledge is described. It are 20 points. Humility, pridelessness, non-violence, tolerance, simplicity, approaching a bona fide spiritual master, cleanliness, steadiness, self-control, renunciation of the objects of sense gratification, absence of false ego, the perception of evil, birth, death, old age and disease, detachment, freedom from entanglement with children, wife, home, and the rest, even-mindedness amid pleasant and unpleasant events, constant and unalloyed devotion to me, aspiring to live in a solitary place, detachment from the general mass of people, accepting the importance of self-realization and philosophical search for the absolute truth. All this I declare knowledge, and besides this, whatever there may be, is ignorance. So Srila Prabhupada makes the point, this is the real process of knowledge. So knowledge, one can get to by going to a process. And this is the process of knowledge that we have, that this is a process through jnana which leads to knowledge. So Srila Prabhupada writes, this is actually the means to get out of those elements. The embodied soul is entrapped by the body, which is a casing made of 24 elements, and the process of knowledge described here is the means to get out, because this process will lead to realizations. We have heard in the 10th chapter by Krishna 10.10, Krishna says, Tesham satayuknam bhajtam pritapavakam dadami bodhiyogam tam yena mamupayanti te. The Dami, Krishna gives realization to the heart when we perform devotional service. We serve him with a little love. So when Krishna in the next verse said, Tesham evanakampatam amajana jamtaman nasa jamatma bhavastuganti panavashvata. To such a devotee who serves me with a little love, I from within his heart with the lamp of knowledge, jnana dipana, I cleanse his misconceptions. So this process here describes, that brings us this jnana dipana. We get realizations. Because this first 10-11 is Krishna tells how he gives realizations from within the heart. And we can get these realizations also through this process of knowledge. Humility is the first. So this process of knowledge, because this process of knowledge must lead to understand Krishna's position, our position, and our relationship with Krishna, which is devotional service. That our constitutional position is not to be under the control of birth, death, old age and disease. No, that's the evil. That has nothing to do with our relationship with Krishna. It's forgetting Krishna that makes us forget makes us forget Krishna, to see everything as objects of sense gratification, to become absorbed in family life as everything But this is everything, that's the goal of my life. That, yes. No, devotee wise realizations, he doesn't want to be in the center. He wants always to be at the background, in a solitary place. He doesn't care what the general mass of people says in this world. He accepts the importance of self-realization. So that's the process. And Srila Prabhupada makes a point from these 20 elements, there are 2 elements, very important, because one must approach the spiritual master and one must engage in devotional service. These 2. That because why are they the most important? Because if one accepts the spiritual master, follows in his instructions and engages in devotional service, all the other will develop, that will follow. One will renounce from sense gratification. That because one is engaged in devotional service, that so one is not interested in pleasant or not disturbed by unpleasant events. That's for the body. It's just, that's temporary. This enjoyment and so on. So one gets realizations. So these 2 are most important. Accepting a spiritual master and engage in devotional service. Without devotional service, the other point become all useless, because one who performs devotional service, he develops all good qualities. Sastri, Bhakti, Bhagavad-gita, Kinshana, Saverkana Tatra. Yeah, that's mentioned in the Bhagavatam, 5th canto. Teachings of Lord Sri Shabadev. That, yeah, it's also mentioned in the purport here. Yeah. So these are the most important. And then you have all these qualities, these points. I will read a few lines of that, but we cannot go in detail for all these. But humility means that one should not be anxious to have satisfaction of being honored by others. Lord Chaitanya said, Trinat pis nitsnet auravis aisne amanna manadana kirtanya sudari. One should be more humble than a straw in the street. Humility is the beginning of knowledge. Krishna will not give you knowledge as you not understand, when you don't understand that he's God and that you are subordinate to him. That no, that one must know one's position. If one knows Krishna, then one knows one's position. One becomes humble. That, and this honor and dishonor, that's for the body, that's useless. If you leave this body, suppose you have been dishonored all your life and then you leave the body, then you get another body in the next life, but what with the dishonor of your last life? Nobody cares about it. It's all gone. For actual advancement in spiritual life, one should have a test to see how far one is progressing, how one can just buy these items. So that's important. How to recognize who is advanced and not advanced. It's important to know who is advanced and not advanced. One can judge by these items. Also in the 12th chapter we have heard a whole list from verse 14 till 20, beginning with Advesta Sarva Bhutanam. Advesta Sarva Bhutanam. One is non-envious from all living entities and so on, equal in happiness and distress, and all, a whole list. And here you have again a list to see how you can see that someone is advanced and not advanced. And that's important. If you have studied Nectar of Instruction, or maybe you will still study it, that in text 5, Nectar of Instruction, there in the first lines of the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, in order to apply these 6 loving exchanges with devotion, between devotion, as mentioned in the previous verse, appropriately, you must know who is advanced and who is not advanced. Otherwise, if you don't know who is advanced and who is not advanced, you are a neophyte and you will make offenses. Anyway, that's a whole study, but it's important to consider that. So this knowledge is important. Non-violence. Actually, non-violence means not to put others in distress. That's One, and Srila makes a point, one should try his best to distribute real knowledge to the people so that they may become enlightened and leave this material entanglement. Because if you engage in material activities with others, you will bring them in distress. Tolerance means that one should be practiced to bear insult and dishonor from others. Simplicity means that without diplomacy, one should be so straightforward that he can disclose the real truth even to an enemy. But cleanliness, 2 kinds of cleanliness, Srila Prabhupada said. External, internal. External, taking a bath. Internal, chanting Hare Krishna, is cleansing the mind, intelligence, the subtle body. If you have Krishna in your mind, Krishna is antiseptic and prophylactic. It's certain Shirsa Upanishad. Antiseptic means he will cleanse your heart from lust, anger, greed, and so on. And prophylactic, it acts like a vaccine, that no new lust or contamination can come in when you are thinking of Krishna. Steadiness, one should be very determined to make progress in self, in spiritual life. And self-control, one should not accept anything detrimental to spiritual progress. Then Srila Prabhupada speaks in the purport of the tongue, how to control the tongue. Always engage it in tasting remnants of foodstuff offered to Krishna and chanting Hare Krishna. And with the eyes we should see the beautiful form of Krishna. Ears should be engaged in hearing about Krishna. That. False ego is accepting this body as oneself. False ego is condemned, not real ego. That. One should try to understand the distress of accepting birth, death, and old age and disease. And then Srila Prabhupada refers to the Bhagavatam. This is in the 3rd canto, teachings of Lord Kapila, how the living entity in the womb is described very graphically. So no one wants to be diseased, no one wants to be old, but we cannot avoid this. So the devotees have a pessimistic view on materialistic life and all this distress of death, birth, old age, and disease. But we are most optimistic about our spiritual constitution, that we are eternal, we don't die. So that's the positive side. So he says, as for detachment from children, wife, and home, it is not meant that one should not have no feeling for these. They are not real objects of our affection, but when they are not favorable for spiritual progress, then one should not be attached to them. The best process for making the home pleasant is Krishna consciousness. If one is in full Krishna consciousness, he can make his home very happy. So it says we should do 4 things: family life, chant Hare Krishna, accept remnants of food offered to Krishna, discuss the books like Bhagavad-gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and engage in deity worship. That's, yeah. Happiness and distress one has to tolerate, but if one is adapted to the spiritual way of life, then naturally we don't want to mix with materialistic man. So Srila Prabhupada concludes, one should make research to understand the self. That is recommended here. So, yes. Engaging in the devotional service of the Lord, that is the perfection of knowledge. So, I'll just read the last paragraph, that's a nice conclusion. Beginning from the practicing humility up to the point of realization of the Supreme Truth, the Absolute Personality of Godhead, this process is just like a staircase beginning from the ground floor, going up to the top floor. Now on this staircase there are so many people who have reached the first floor, the second and the third floor, but unless one reaches the top floor, which is the understanding of Krishna, he is at the lower state of knowledge. If anyone wants to compete with God at the same time make advancement of spiritual knowledge, he will be frustrated. This is clearly stated that without humility, understanding is not truly possible. The beginning of knowledge, therefore, is amanitva, humility. One should be humble and know that he is subordinate to the Supreme Lord. Due to the rebellion against the Supreme Lord, one becomes subordinate to material needs. So this is verses 8-12. What do we need to remember here? You never forget that this verse is about process of knowledge, that there are 2 of the 20 points essential: accepting a spiritual master and performance of devotional service, because from the performance of devotional service all the other qualities develop. So amanitva, humility. Without humility we cannot understand this knowledge. One must accept the truth that is God, that who is God? We are not God. That's the first thing we must accept. We are subordinate to the Supreme Lord. Then we can start making progress on this, through this process of knowledge. Now in verses 13 till 19, the object of knowledge is described, jneyam. So the soul and the supersoul are here discussed. That text 13. Verse 13 refers to the soul, not yet to the supersoul. That Jneyam yat tat pavakshami yat tvam retamasnute anadimat param brahma nasat uchate. I shall now explain the knowable, which you will taste, the eternal Brahman, the spirit, beginningless and subordinate to me, lies beyond the cause and effect of the material world. So first the Lord explains here the soul, that so Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, there is no specific date at which the jiva was born, nor can anyone trace out his the history of the Jivatma's manifestation from the Supreme Lord. But because Katha Upanishad says, also Bhagavad-gita, the knower, that's 220, the knower of the body is never born and never dies, is full of knowledge. So the living entities are eternally in the service of the Supreme Lord. And that's also confirmed by Lord Chaitanya. Therefore, the description of Brahma mentioned in this verse is in relation to the individual soul. Yeah. And now, so 14, the description begins from the super soul. But verse 13, Brahman here in the Sanskrit refers to the individual soul. That because the Anadi, further, that Anada Brahma, or the Supreme Lord, is different. So Krishna says, one who understands this soul and the super soul, he can relish nectar in this life. And now we will, because Krishna said, yeah, of course, that before we heard 327, Praktikrina Kriyamana Nigunakarana Sarvsankara Vimudatma Kartamiti Manyati. Krishna says that everything is done by material nature, and one would think himself to do is the BPRS. But then Krishna says, Mayapura Pragati. I'm the superintendent of material nature. How is he the superintendent? He's a superintendent through the super soul. So we will hear about this super soul. And the first thing we will hear is that the super soul is all-pervading. Sarvata panipatam tat sarvata ksishyamukham sarvata shrutimaloke sarma vrittatishtati. Everywhere are his hands and his legs, his eyes, heads and faces, and yes, ears everywhere. In this way the super soul exists, pervading everything. So, as the sun exists diffusing its unlimited rays, so does the super soul, or the personality of Godhead. He exists in his all-pervading form, and in him exist all the individual living entities, beginning from the great teacher Brahma down to the small ants. So in 9.5 we have already heard, Krishna says, yes, he says, I'm in everything, but I'm separate from everything at the same time. I'm separated as Bhagavan of everything, but I'm all-pervading as a super soul. Yes. So the super soul is all-pervading. And he can accept, Srila Prabhupada makes that point. Yes, because he's all-pervading. He can just accept anything, even from a distant place. But as individual souls, we don't have that power, but Krishna can. So if everyone offers him a flower or a fruit or a little water, and Krishna, even if it's a far distance away, he can accept things, because it's all pervading. So this verse describes the super soul, the supreme soul, the personality of Godhead, not the individual soul. And in text 15 we are hearing more qualities of the super soul. nirguna sarvendriya gunabhasam sarvendriya vivarchitam asaktam sarvavritsheva nirgunam gunabhuktricha. The supersoul is the original source of all senses, yet is without senses. He is unattached, although he is the maintainer of all living beings. He transcends the modes of nature, and at the same time is the master of all the modes of nature. So, the Srila Prabhupada writes, actually, the individual souls have spiritual senses. And Srila Prabhupada says that we have this hand, this specific gross hand, you have the subtle hand, and then you have the spiritual hand. It's there, but it's inactive. It's covered over. So actually, the individual souls have spiritual senses, but in conditioned life they are covered with material elements, and therefore the sense activities are exhibited through matter. The Supreme Lord's senses are not so covered. So the Supersoul lives in the heart of every living being, and he knows what we have done in the past, what they are doing now, and what is awaiting us in the future. He knows the future because he knows our past activities and the reactions. He is the maintainer of all living entities and the witness of all activity. As far as we can understand, from Vedic literature, the Supreme Lord is always transcendental. Due to materially contaminated senses, we cannot see his form. So the Lord is nirguna. That's a point we have to remember. Nirguna. His senses are transcendental without covering. Not like us. Our spiritual senses are covered. Krishna never. Nirguna. So the impersonalist cannot see his form due to materially contaminated senses. Therefore they misunderstand the Supreme Lord. So they are still materially contaminated. That's also confirmed in the Bhagavatam. Jnere vindaksa vimuktamanast vestabhava avisuddha buddhaya. Avisuddha buddhaya. The impersonalist, their conception is, or their body, their intelligence is impure, avisuddha, because they have only a partial realization. They realize, I'm not the body, I'm spirit, I'm Brahman, good. But they don't know who they are. They have realized they are not the body. But who are we? Mamaivam Shichivelaka Shiva Bhuta Sanatna, we will hear in 15.7. We are part and parcels of Krishna, and therefore servants of Krishna, subordinate to Krishna. And that knowledge they don't have. And they think they can merge with Brahman and become God, because they think Brahman is God. Brahman has no form. But there is Para-Brahman. And Para-Brahman is a transcendental form. That's different.
Maharaj, I had one question. Can I ask?
Yeah, sure.
Maharaj, as we are hearing that Krishna is Lord is everywhere in the form of super soul, and also we hear that uh, like within within our body we are having uh, two souls. Like one is the soul and one is the super soul. The super soul, like soul is basically the enjoying bird, which is in either taking the benefits or suffering, and the other one is just witnessing. So generally one doubt comes into mind, that why Lord is just acting like a witness? Why is he waiting for the soul to turn back to him and then only he will guide? Means why is just observing and providing the facility so that he can go away from Krishna and not return to him. So how can we understand this nature of God?
The, the Supreme Lord sees himself to be sees himself as the servant of the desires of the living entities. So once we were in the spiritual world, and we became curious. What would it be to be Krishna? What would it be to be the controller? And then Krishna says, yes, okay, you want to experience? Yeah, sure. But Krishna says, but there's one problem. I'm the controller. There will be no fun for you if you remember me. So first you have to forget me. So therefore we are brought into material nature. And we got a material body to enjoy and to exploit. Because we want to be God. We want to be the controller. So, but Krishna is a controller. So Krishna says, I stay at the background and I facilitate you. But there is one issue. If you come to the material world, you want to be the controller. You must bear the consequences of your actions, your reactions. So Krishna stays at the background and looks at the living entity and fulfills his desires and gives his reactions. And Krishna says in the 5th chapter, Nadate Karichit Pranam, yeah, this verse says, yeah, I'm not responsible for the suffering and the happiness of the living entities. It's due to their pious and impious activities. So it's due to us. We want to be the enjoyer. As long as we want to be the enjoyer and the controller, Krishna stays at the background. Because if he wants to fulfill our desires. So Krishna consciousness is changing our desire. And Krishna make arrangements if we want. He's not forcing us. Because love of Krishna cannot be forced. He's not forcing upon that. He never does that. But he gives us Guru, Sadhu and Shastra to guide us back. And Krishna says, if you start to serve me with love, I immediately reciprocate from within the heart. So Krishna is ready. But we must want. That's the point. If we don't want, Krishna remains as a super soul at the background. Does that help them?
Maharaj, like just one thing, like as Krishna tells in 5th chapter that I am Suhridam, like your best friend.
Yeah.
So if we are someone's best friend and if our friend is doing some mistakes, then isn't it our duty to correct him and to bring him on the right path? So if Krishna is our best friend, then
Yeah,
why is he
Krishna,
allowing to turn us away from him?
Krishna is our best friend, and therefore he fulfills our desires. He's the servant of our desires. And why are all these souls coming to this world? They want to enjoy. And Krishna facilitates them. Is that not nice? As a friend? You want to have that experience, and he makes all arrangements for you. He gives you your body, air, water, fire, all the plants that need to exist. He gives you everything. that's quite a friend who is facilitating a lot. But like I said, Krishna does not interfere with our free will. He knows our future, but what he does not know is how we will react on the happiness and the pain we will endure. That's, are we going to push again the red button of karma and say yes, thinking ourselves the controller, or are we going to surrender to him? That's up to us. So Krishna gives us free will. If he would intervene and bring everything back to the spiritual world, there is no free will. He will force it upon us. But people in this world are very demoniac, most of them. Srila Prabhupada, we have heard, is 99.9% are Naradams, socially and politically developed, but inside great demons. And we will hear about this description in the 16th chapter about what that means. So that is why Krishna does not intervene. He facilitates and he respects the desires of the living entity. He has great respect for our desires. And that's a friend who helps you to fulfill your desires. And some people, they don't want to get out of this material world because they want to enjoy. And even for them, Krishna gives them opportunities, karma kanda, to enjoy in a pious way and stay in this material world. That's also an option. But it's up to us. Like, we cannot force someone to take up Krishna consciousness. And Krishna instructs us that. He said, this secret should not be explained to those who are not austere, not my devotees. He does not want that we are going to interfere with the free will of others. So if you are propagating Krishna consciousness and someone is really inimical to Krishna, Krishna says, don't do it. Sometimes we distribute books. You distribute books and one after another say, no, I'm not interested. But then you have someone who is very interested. It's Krishna who sends them because they have a desire to get out of it. And Krishna helps them. That, you see, in that way. Does that help?
Yes, Maharaj, yes.
Okay. Try my best. Someone else? Otherwise we continue. We have still a few verses to go. Moment. So text 15. Savendriya gunabhasan savendriya vivarchitam asaktam savabriksheva nirgudam gunabhuktasya. Bhaktrisha. The super soul is the original source of all senses, yet he is without senses. He is unattached, although he is the maintainer of all living beings. He transcends the modes of nature, and at the same time, he is the master of all the modes of nature. Yeah. So we have discussed this verse, that is the maintainer of all living entities, the witness of our activities, but we cannot see the Lord's form. Srila Prabhupada said, due to our materially contaminated senses, we cannot see his form. We will learn about that also in the Nectar of Devotion. We cannot see him with our contaminated senses. We have to purify ourselves by the chanting of the holy names. And then we will know Krishna as he is. Text 16. Bhayirantas sabhuta namacham charamevasha subsmat vat tat avichenam durastam santike satat. The supreme truth exists outside and inside of all living beings, the moving and non-moving, because his subtle is beyond the power of the material senses to see or to know. Although far, far away, it's also near to all. So, yes, far away and near to all. Is present in the spiritual world as Lord Narayan, as Krishna, and in the material world as the super soul. He said that to understand him, our material mind and senses cannot act. But one who has purified his mind and senses by practicing Krishna consciousness in devotional service can see him constantly. If we are purified in heart, we can see him constantly. But how to see him constantly, we will hear, we have heard at the end of the 11th chapter, of the universal form. It's only by Ananya Bhakti, pure devotional service, that Krishna can be known. Text 18, no, 17. Avibhaktam sabhuteshu vibhaktam ya sanstitam putabhate satatsheyam kasishnu pavavishnu sa. Although the Supersoul appears to be divided among all living beings, he is never divided. He is situated as one. Although he is the maintainer of every living entity, it is understood that he devours and develops all. So in the purpose, Srila Prabhupada gives an example of the sun. So the sun is in the sky, that if one goes 5,000 miles in all directions and asks where is the sun, everyone will say that it's shining on his head. In the Vedic literature, this example is given to show although he is undivided, he is situated as if divided. Yeah, it's like the sun is reflected in many pots. That's another example. The Supreme Lord, although the maintainer of every living entity, devours everything at the time of annihilation. This was confirmed in the 11th chapter when the Lord said that he had come to devour all the warriors assembled at Kurukshetra. He also mentioned that in the form of time he devours also. He is the annihilator, the killer of all. When there is creation, he develops all from their original state, and at the time of annihilation, he devours them. So he is the original of all living entities and the rest of all. And after the creation, everything rests in him. Good. So he's the maintainer and the devourer of all living entities. It's a super soul that lets grow this body, that maintains it, and then it's annihilated. It's a super soul that lets it go through the 6 stages that the body goes through. That's 18. Jyoti samapitat jyotis tamasa paramamuchyate jnanam jnanam jnanagamyam vedisarvasya vishtitam. Is the source of all light in all luminous objects. Is beyond the darkness of matter and is unmanifested. Is knowledge, is the object of knowledge, and is the goal of knowledge. Is situated in everyone's heart. So you have the sun. Srila Prabhupada explains the effulgence of the sun gets his power from the Brahma-jyoti. It's a reflection of the Brahma-jyoti. And the Brahma-jyoti is the Lord's spiritual effulgence. But of course, this Brahma Jyoti in the material world, well, the Brahma Jyoti is everywhere, but in the material world is covered by Ma Tattva, the material manifestation, all the elements, 24 elements we spoke about. So Krishna is also, Srila Prabhupada speaks about, is the goal of knowledge, is knowledge, the object of knowledge, and the goal of knowledge. That, yeah. So that's important. Knowledge, object of knowledge, that, and the goal of knowledge. So the one who is anxious to be transferred to the spiritual world, knowledge is given by the Supreme Lord, who is situated in everyone's heart. So what is this knowledge? It's knowing who Krishna is, knowing who we are, and what our relationship is. So this is described in the Vedas, that first you must develop Sambandha Jnana. Who is Krishna? Who am I? What is our relationship, which is devotional service? Then Abhideya Jnana, engaging in that devotional service. And then Prajon, Abhideya, and then the goal of knowledge, Prayojan, is Krishna, to serve Krishna and develop love for him. So we need that knowledge. If you don't know who Krishna is, how to perform devotional service and what the goal is, then there is no devotional service. But here it says that this Vedic literature confirms that Brahman is concentrated transcendental knowledge. The one who is anxious to be transferred to the spiritual world, knowledge is given by the Supreme Lord, who is situated in everyone's heart. So he gives to Guru, Shada and Sastri, and he gives also from within. The Antaryami Guru, the Super Soul. Only by knowing him can one surpass the boundary of birth and death. At the end, that Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Super Soul, is the Prabhu or Master of all living entities, therefore is the ultimate shelter of all living entities. So there is no denying the fact that the Supreme Super Soul and the individual soul are different. Good. We have spoken about the Lord's effulgence, the Brahma Jyoti, which eliminates the Vaikuntha worlds and which gives light to the sun and the moon in the material world. We have heard that the Supreme Lord is the goal of knowledge. Now we have verse 19, the last verse. Iti chatram tatagyan yam saktam samasata. Okay. Iti chatram tatagyanam yam saktam samasata madbhakta itavihyaya madbhavayo papatsate. Thus the field of activities, knowledge and the knowable have been summarily described by me. Only my devotees can understand this thoroughly and thus attain my nature. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada gives a summary of the verses 6 to 18 we discussed today, that in the purport of 19, that says, now to summarize, one may understand that verses 6 and 7 begin from the Mahabhutani and continuing to the Chaitanya Triti, analyze the material elements and certain manifestation of the symptoms of life. These combine to form the body of the field of activities, and verses 8 to 12 from Ananitvam to Tattva-Jnanartha-darshanam describe the process of knowledge for understanding both types of knower of the fields of activities, namely the soul and the super soul. Then verses 13 till 19 beginning from Anadi Matparam containing to Sri Redisarvasya Vishtitam, describe the soul and the Supreme Lord, or the Super Soul. So 3 items have been described: the field of activity, the process of understanding, and both the soul and the Super Soul. That we have these 3 things. Knowledge of 3 things: the knower, the knowable, and the process of knowledge. And these 3 is Vijnan. So if someone asks you what's Vijnan, it's the combination of the knower, that we are the knower, Super Soul is the knower. The knowable, that's knowing the field of activities and knowing the Super Soul, and the process of knowing. Yeah. Perfect knowledge can be understood by unalloyed devotees of the Lord directly. So that's others are unable to understand. So that's Krishna has mentioned that before. In 4.3 he said to Arjuna, you can understand this knowledge because you are my devotee. 9.1 he said, because Arjuna, you can understand because you are non-envious. So these are qualifications to understand this knowledge. That so we heard about all these items of process of knowledge. That that we heard that we cannot understand the Lord with imperfect senses. That yeah, I think we have covered the essence of this section. Are there any questions, please?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, if you don't mind, can I? We have already explained the answer of one of the questions, but still, can I ask again,
Yes,
please?
sure.
Thank you, Maharaj. Maharaj, this is the answer you gave that Krishna doesn't force anybody. Love is not by force. It's by it's by devotional service it
Yeah.
comes. Uh, this is the reason I understand. I'm trying to understand Maharaj, but still it's coming if okay, if I see it as a tattva, if there are my parents, like if something is not good for me, they will even scold me not to go for that if it's not good for me. So still it's going on, Maharaj, that Krishna is the best well-wisher, he is a Suhridam friend, and if it is not good for me, he is witnessing. I'm agreeing that he is not forcing. He is not forcing us because it was my free will that I wanted to enjoy. So he gave me, okay, you go and enjoy. But of course, the consequences are here, which are here. I got the body and all. Answers are here. But still, Maharaj, if you can please help. That if somebody is very good friend, he will, why will he allow us to go to hell? It's Sukhale Vinasha Ashvatam.
Yeah, that's Krishna. If we want to go to hell, he will facilitate our going to hell because he's our servant. But he's always trying to bring us back. And that's the reason why there is suffering in this world. It never works out. You will always be frustrated. And Krishna is waiting till the moment that you will understand that this material life is all useless, completely useless. That, yes, because that is the illusion of everyone in this world. They think they are going to be happy in this world. Srila Prabhupada says there is no happiness in this world, just sense gratification. That real happiness is the happiness of the soul. And what do we all want? We want to love and be loved. And do you get that in this world? No. It's lust, it's a different thing. And it never gives satisfaction. So you have this frustration again and again. And that's what Krishna says. Dayate visyapam samsangas tesi bhajayate sankha sayate kamakam kod vijayate. You meditate on enjoying in this world, and you create, anticipates as happiness, but then it doesn't come, and frustration, anger comes. And yeah, so that's this is a place for rectification, the material world. This body is a machine to give us pain. If you are in the prison, you are not going to be happy. There is suffering. And Krishna waits until we turn our face to them and say, sorry, Krishna, we took the wrong decision. Please bring me back. Get me out of here. And then Krishna helps. But that's the reason why there is suffering. So Krishna is trying, but he does not interfere directly with our desire. We must experience that we want to be God, but it's not possible. That we have to go to this learning. Yeah, that's how Krishna created the whole system. And it's for our betterment, this suffering. But yeah, but many don't come to their senses. But Krishna gives them a chance again and again. And one life, hopefully by the association of devotees, they will make it. That come to the conclusion, I'm not a controller, I'm controlled. And who is a controller? They find out.
Thank you so very much, Maharaj. It helped me. Thank you, Maharaj.
Question. Any other question? So, good. It's 9 o'clock in Delhi. It's getting late. So, I'm looking forward to see you on Sunday. Sunday we have another class, same time. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Sai Prabhupada.